Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of the GeekVerse podcast. I am your host, Taylor, and today we are continuing our spoilers in depth review of The Boys Season 4. Now, of course, you might be wondering, where is Travis? Well, in light of a recent video that he had posted, I had to take legal action. My lawyers finally came to the aid that I needed them to help me. Finally, they've been slacking so bad. It's been absolutely horrendous. The quality of service they've been providing, and just the fact that Travis has been able to just spread all this and misinformation online. It's been horrible. And so the final straw was this video. That was the kicker. And so the lawyers came down hard, removed him from being on the review this week because this is just absolutely horrible. It's unjustified. It's terrible, 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 terrible. So he's not here, and we'll see. Maybe he might fight back. Well, he's going to fight back. He might be back next week. Who knows? But for now, I'm running the show. I'm running things right now, here, today, tonight. This is Geekverse Podcast. I am the Zendaya, as I said, Taylor Field. And before we get into our review, a couple of plugs. You can find us with your internet connection in the search bar, GeekVerse.ca. Here's our home base. GeekVerseCast, our Twitter. Geekverse is our Facebook. You can also find us on Patreon, where you get ad-free, early, exclusive episodes and content there. We got so many retrospectives popping off. We have Twister retro that's going to be dropping there soon with me and Kirkland. We have our Alien retro that's been popping off. So we got the first 4 Alien films, and then we're going to be getting into Alien versus Predator and continuing on all the way up to Alien Covenant in celebration of the new Alien Romulus film that is dropping. You can also get a bunch of other retros that we put up on our Patreon as well. I think they might be on our public feeds now too, but there's always just something nice that's dropping on there, like our exclusive Patreon shows, like our originals, and we have bread and butter topics as well. I get confused which one is which that drops on our public feeds, but one of them drops exclusively on our Patreon. And then you can get a ton of other stuff as well that's early, and it's a good time. And the people that are on our Patreon are producers. We got Aaron Braden, April of Darkness, Jack Grant, Muds, Sam. You folks are fan-freaking-tastic. Absolutely love you all. Thank you for doing everything that you do. In addition to all that, we have a huge celebration Geekverse Day event that's rolling around here, is coming to you in August. I can't remember off the top of my head the official date, but it is the beginning of August. And it's going to be a good time. Basically, you can look at it as kind of like a Patreon event of sorts, because if we get newer Patreon subscribers, this 9-hour event is going to continue. And we're going to be adding more hours to it the more subscriptions that we get. And so we're going to be sliding in a whole bunch of stuff. There's supposed to be something going on between me and Travis, but we'll see if the lawyers keep it at bay. We got a whole bunch of other things going on, like Geekverse Trivia, 2012 Golden Geeks. There's so much content that's going to be dropping. It's going to be an absolute good time. So you'll definitely want to be checking that out. What else do we got going on? A lot of movies that have been popping off here. We got Long Legs. I think me and Travis are going to try and do a review for that. We have Maxine, although me and Travis are seeing it later. I don't think we're going to review it. We might just talk about it on a newscast and just, in retrospect, give our thoughts. And what else do we got? This is the month, Wolverine, Deadpool. We're coming around. It's going to be here soon, so you can expect that review. And yeah, in August, we got Alien Romulus and a bunch of other stuff as well. I guess that's another thing. Actually, we're doing a retro for Logan and a couple other X-Men related things. So there's just tons of stuff. It's wonderful. But that's 4 minutes of your time, me just rambling on now, and you guys want to hear about The Boys, episode 6. So we're going to get into our non-spoilers thoughts first, and then we will deep dive into our spoilers thoughts after. So this episode, man, I stayed up till midnight. I was watching it, and this was just an absolute delight. This show, and pardon me if I'm probably extremely biased, I love this show. This show just, it cracks me up, and it has certain key notes of innocent humor that really just land for me. And it's the way the cast members react to these different scenarios and the scenarios that just happen. Like, it's just such a realistic situation in this world that they've created. And I think it's that sense of realism and the seriousness of how these characters respond is just what really cracks me up in in these different circumstances. And this episode had just such an outrageous situation that really it blew my mind. It was hilarious. But I think how things progressed in this episode. We got an interesting moment with one of our characters, and to me, I felt like if there was ever a turning point or a potential moment to kind of sway said character over, this could have been that time. But due to certain actions of another character, it just was reinforced and cemented this character's position in this certain narrative with their surrounding members. So there's that. You have the interesting stuff that kind of again happens with Homelander and just the characters that he surrounded himself with. That was very interesting, and you get a little bit more of the backstory on the overall kind of goal and plot for what the certain members are trying to do. There was one good revelation in here, and if you, well, I won't say that, that's a spoiler, but uh, it's a Travis told you so. I'll leave it at that. Other than that, we got some very, very fun, like I said, humorous moments too. I just think this episode was absolutely just a step up from where we've been so far, and it just felt silly and ridiculous. And I like that there's not really any filler episodes. Well, some of the stuff is filler. It's filler in the sense where it's progressing the narrative. But in this case, in this episode that we got to, it just feels like we're on a little bit of a side adventure, but it's not really a side adventure because it is also progressing the narrative. But I like these small little objectives and missions. Like, okay, today the boys got to go do this. And it's like, okay, we're gonna go and enjoy a hour long adventure of what the boys are up to, and then just shit hits the fan, all hell breaks loose, and it just totally doesn't go their way. And I love that every single week. This is a highlight, and I really enjoy my Thursdays when I get to sit back and indulge in a little bit of the boys, because the episodes don't disappoint. They really, really don't. And so I really want to go ahead and rewatch this because I think it just cracks me up. Oh my goodness. A lot of familiar faces too. Again, if we're looking at Gen V, I guess one particular familiar face from Gen V, which was interesting nonetheless. But yeah, it was just there's just some interesting stuff that happens with our characters, and there's not much else I can say that's non spoilers because it'll just be spoilers. So we're going to call it there. End of the review. No, I'm just kidding. Our first ad break, and then we'll be getting into spoilers right after that. And we are back. So where do we start here? I guess we got the boys Spider-Man officially introduced, and they can't label it any harder of a Spider-Man than just the safe word Zendaya. So we got Web Weaver, and his introduction was just, oh my gosh, what the heck? MM just had to go in there and like shoot these drugs up his back end, and then got some web put on his cheek. It just his apartment's webbed everywhere. Oh my goodness! Basically, there's a secret meeting going on, and A Train let the boys know that this meeting was taking place. Like, hey, you're gonna want to get in there. It's at Tech Knight's house, and Tech Knight was from Gen V. And so the plan is Huey is going to wear Web Weaver's costume and basically sneak in there because Web Weaver was somehow invited by Tech Knight to come to the party. Now, the reason he was invited, as Huey slowly begins to learn, is that, oh, he's here to be his sidekick, and not in a heroic sense, more so a I need to fuck your whole sort of sense, and just led to this crazy thing where he goes into the basement dungeon of Tech Knight, and Ashley ends up going down there and has a very vigorous experience tickling Huey's feet as Huey is still at full in costume and gets this the stuff. Huey gets saddled and strapped into this bench thing, and they're just like teasing him and tickling him, and he doesn't know the safe word, so he's just spouting out like, oh, tarantula, like different things. It just absolutely cracks me up, just the debacle that he's in. And it escalates quite heavily too, because originally he's in there and he's not supposed to see the seven, but the seven is there, which is not great. And so he's got on the outside, he's got Kimiko, and he's got Starlight on the outside too. So they're all basically keeping tabs on him as he's supposed to get in, plant the bugs, and get out. It derails obviously when Tech Knight's like, hey, let's go to my dungeon. And Huey follows along with him, but that whole dungeon sequence, it's absolutely bonkers. It's some crazy shit, and I could not stop laughing at just how Huey was handling it. And this is the fallout too of how he's dealing with his dad dying, and now he's in this freaking dungeon just being dominated and having to sit on a cake and fart on it just to appease Tech Knight as he's like choking himself. It's just some crazy shit. Oh my goodness, absolutely bonkers. But the real thing here going on with this party is that you have a lot of political, I guess, powers where Homelander is trying to appeal to them. He wants to get them on his side, and a lot of these guys are very much living in radical and ancient mindsets. And so when Homelander's kind of prescribing to them, like, hey, this is what we need to do, this, that, uh, they're not totally sold on it. And I think when he's trying to lean on uh, Sister Sage, it's interesting because again that kind of falls to the sidelines because Sister Sage gets brain damage and so she can't technically help him in this sense, which it works out because there's a whole bunch of stuff here that it could backfire. Like A-Train could have been caught as the bad guy here. There's so many things that go sideways here, and so that bites Homelander in the butt. As Homelander's trying to pitch to our radical political powers here that hey, we need to do this and this and this, and so they're basically counteracting and saying, well, if I'm being devil's advocate, what are you going to do about this party of people and this and that and that? And so it ends up really kind of uh, wearing him down, I guess you could say. You get to see him be emotionally compromised in this sense. And so he's turning to Sister Sage, but Sister Sage was briefly caught by and Starlight and Kimiko, and ends up shooting her in the head. And so that leads to brain damage, and we've seen that she does that to herself just to kind of let off steam. And so she immediately turns into just this basic person who is just talking ridiculous and not anywhere near the intelligence that Homelander needed at this time. Uh, and I think it was funny because you see now what his reaction to Sister Sage, because no one has seen this except for the Deep, and I thought that maybe it would be a little bit more of a progressive thing where it would just kind of open up and or people would figure it out as like a weakness. But I think that it just he doesn't know exactly what is going on here because she got shot in the head and he sees that, but he doesn't know exactly what's going on, and he doesn't know until later when Firecracker or Firestarter, no, Fire Lamplighter. I'm getting Lamplighter confused with them. It's Firecracker, I believe. Yes, so many fires, Lamplighters, and all that. So Firecracker is basically dealing with Starlight in this Tech Knight's house, and that's where I was alluding to in the non spoilers, where it felt briefly like Firecracker could have turned over maybe if Starlight had been more sincere and not like drugged her and knocked her out unconscious and then escaped, because she really genuinely seemed like she was listening to what Starlight was saying. So that would have been an advantage to them if they were able to kind of reel her in, because she's already feeling exiled from Sister Sage and Homelander and a few other characters too. So she's feeling alone, and that's something that, again, it's not that you want to take advantage of it, but it's something that could have tipped the scales over towards the boys and over towards Starlight, because I think Firecracker would have leaned towards that reconciliation that they had there briefly. But of course, Starlight kind of side railed that when she drugged her and basically left her out there. That comes back into the fold at the end of the episode when Homelander is just like, what happened to everyone? And he's in his suite, and Firecracker basically confronts him, lets him know like, oh, you basically made me who I am, I owe you everything. He's accusing her of being the spy because when Firecracker tells him that Tech Knight's dead, Starlight escaped, all this stuff, he's thinking, okay, well, you let Starlight escape, then how do I know you're not the spy? And so that's when she confides in him, tells him everything, yada, 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 and he believes her. And the final kicker here is that this is something Travis pointed out to me a couple episodes ago, was that in her trailer there are some drugs that help produce like breast milk and whatnot, and she was taking these drugs, and So when she's confiding and telling Homelander everything, that she would do everything for him, she pulls her shirt down and just squirts the load right onto him, and he's just like flabbergasted and like can't barely process it, and is like head over heels, like, oh my god. And then you get this scene where he's just curled up, and yeah, just going to town, feeding away, and he's just so on cloud nine. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that dynamic is going to progress, especially because Firecracker now holds a significant amount of power over Homelander. And originally, Travis had pitched, well, maybe this is something that Sister Sage and Firecracker are doing to get the edge over Homelander, but it seems like Sister Sage and Firecracker are very much at opposite ends here and not on the same team. So this is definitely how Homelander gets into the team in the court of Firecracker. Sister Sage definitely botched her position here when she was supposed to help, but Victoria Newman ended up helping Homelander in this meeting. So Sister Sage really ruined that for herself. Of course, it wasn't her fault. She got shot in the head, and that, well, warranted her to be a little not all there. So that's that. And that's where things concluded. We learn from this meeting, as Victoria Newman is standing up for Homelander and they're trying to appeal to all these political powers, that they want to use Tech Knight's resources and his prisons and turn them into concentration camps for, I guess, the people that are basically resistant, people that aren't necessarily listening to this new power shift. So we can see where they're Homelander's trying to turn the United States into like this totalitarian dictatorship of a country. So that's an interesting thing in itself to see how that's going to progress and how it's going to turn into the next few episodes. And I guess the final season as well. So after all that, yeah, Huey gets saved. We learn that Tech Knight he wants to put some holes into Huey and fuck the holes, and Tech Knight gets caught though, and so Kimiko is trying to torture him by stabbing him. He's like, "Oh yeah, fucking do it, stab me, stab me." Just not working. So how do they actually upset him? They log into his laptop and to his bank account and start donating money to like Black Lives Matter and all these different things, and he's freaking out like, no, no, like that's not what he wants. So his butler, who raised him since he was a little boy, ends up choking out Tech Knight, killing him. uh, and then that's when Huey learns the safe word is Zendaya. uh, so Web Weaver is absolutely the Spider-Man of the boys. And I guess Zendaya, just like Will Ferrell, is canon in this universe. So there you go. Everything Web Weaver was just so freaking funny. It was absolutely hilarious. What else do we have in this episode? We have a moment here in the mansion of Tech Knight where MM. It was after he shoots Sister Sage in the head, and he starts to have like heart attack, panic attack, actually passes out on the ground, and so they need to get him out of there. They call A Train. A Train shows up real quick. I'm like, okay, reluctantly, I'll take you to a hospital. Takes MM to the hospital, and as he gets to the hospital and puts MM on a bench, there's a little kid there, and the little kid looks up and just smiles at him, and A Train smiles and leaves. I love that so much. It felt like a real, just a good moment for a character developing, and I feel like something's gonna happen. A Train's gonna die, but I like that A Train is actually officially helping the boys now, and I like that A Train had that moment with that kid. There's the what was it called? The boys, Will Ferrell and A Train movie that they're doing. Gosh, was it called the Making A Train? Why can't I remember what it's called? Well, anyways, it's the previous few episodes you get to see that they're working on this movie, A Train and Will Ferrell together, and it's just kind of like the story of A Train becoming the hero or something like that. And I feel like this season has been that, where A Train is becoming the hero, and this was just a real big step for our character to do something like this that was just down to earth and simple, but it meant everything to that little kid. And he's trying to do better for his family as well, and just try to appear like he is an actual hero. And so I like that. I like what he's aspiring to be. So I think there's some good stuff to come from that character. As far as other 7 members go, Black Noir is just out. He doesn't want to be Black Noir anymore. He's got his mask off so he can see what it looks like, and he doesn't understand the character, and he wants to take a new gig. And then we got the Deep, who is just trying to act like he's top shit, but he's not because he was left behind with Black Noir at the tower. So Homelander does not need him, but their dialogue was pretty funny. I enjoyed it. What else do we got in this episode? I better check my notes here. So, Starlight could have made favor with Firecracker, Ashley Dungeon, Web Weaver, Spider-Man, Zendaya. So I think I got all of that. The only other big kicker would be Butcher. So he has Victoria Newman's former hubby. Basically, we saw that he got the leg off. He's keeping him hostage and wants him to develop a super virus from what the sheep's head basically was that could target and kill soups. Now you have this dilemma here because it unfolds that what this doctor could create and why they stopped researching this virus was that if they needed to get something strong enough to actually kill Homelander, they would have to make something that would just be so potent it would be airborne, and on top of that it would basically spread and kill every soup on the planet. So that means that Kimiko and Starlight, like his not his real son, but Ryan would also die. It would be so terrible. So there's that, and then you have Jeffrey Dean Morgan's character as well, and the whole thing with that is he's egging on Butcher to try and go through with this. You have Butcher's former wife who's appearing there, and you get this flash realization that, oh my god, Jeffrey Dean Morgan actually sees his wife, and how is that possible? And then it goes through all the cutscenes of the fact that this was a real character, but he died, and he's just part of Butcher's imagination now. And this is exactly what Travis called. So kudos to you, Travis, for landing this prediction. I think that's pretty fantastic. They laid it on hard in this episode, and when I was actively looking and watching it, I was like, okay, this is pretty apparent. You can see how Butcher is reacting to Jeffrey Dean Morgan's character as opposed to the Doctor, and how the Doctor's reacting to Butcher. So yeah, really, really well done, and I thought that was an interesting revelation. Just the fact that Butcher is just becoming more and more unhealthy, and it's not looking good for him. Frenchie is still in jail. He was not in this episode, but he is actively avoiding any visitors. Kimiko is still going to the police station to try and see him, but nothing is coming out of that. But yeah, I think that is pretty much everything in a nutshell. We have some transfers of power. So Sister Sage is losing some of her power, obviously, because we have Firecracker proving to be more valuable and dominant to Homelander at this point. We have Victoria Newman, who had to make some really shitty alliances with these political, radical, old idiots in Tech Knight's house. Tech Knight is now dead. And yeah, we have just a few interesting new developments. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens in next week's episode. I guess next week would be, as Travis is, the penultimate episode. So it'll be very cool to see how that goes. What else is there? I think that is everything. So anything that I missed, we'll touch upon in next week's episode when Travis may or may not come back, depending how the lawyers fare against his lawyers. So thank you, everyone, for tuning into this week's review of The Boys. You can catch us again doing more reviews for Star Wars Acolyte and House of Dragon. We'll be back on Sunday, so there's that. Yeah, thank you very much. Until next time, I am Taylor, and we'll see you in the search bar.